It's weird. You like hang out with
He definitely trusts you.
500 pounds.
In 1993, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery with the development of a revolutionary genetic technology known as CRISPR. This innovation allowed them to edit DNA with precision and held the promise of curing diseases once thought to be incurable. However, by 2016, growing fears of its potential misuse, particularly in creating genetically enhanced bioweapons, led the U.S. government to impose a complete ban on CRISPR, officially classifying it as a possible weapon of mass destruction. Fast forward to the present day, aboard the Athena-1 space station, a catastrophic event has left the station in ruins. The entire crew has been wiped out, except for a lone scientist named Carrie. In a frantic distress call to the control room, she pleads for help, but her superior coldly refuses to grant access to the escape capsule unless she retrieves 3 vital canisters containing experimental mutagens. Terrified but determined to survive, Carrie ventures through the wreckage, locating the containers amid the devastation. However, she is soon spotted by the source of the carnage, a monstrous, genetically mutated rat, the result of a failed experiment. The creature charges after her, and she narrowly makes it into the capsule just as it reaches her. She manages to launch away moments before the entire station explodes. Tragically, her escape pod, damaged by the chaos, fails mid-re-entry and detonates above Earth. The mutagenic canisters are scattered across the planet, and Carrie is killed in the blast. Not long after, at the San Diego Wildlife Sanctuary, experienced primatologist Davis Okoye introduces his friend Nelson and 2 new recruits to the gorilla habitat. Davis is especially close with George, a gentle and intelligent albino gorilla whom he rescued years ago and taught to communicate using sign language. During the tour, tensions flare when Pavo, an aggressive gorilla, displays dominance and threatens the female gorillas. Davis attempts to de-escalate the situation, but Pavo grows more violent until George intervenes, scaring him off. Afterward, Davis and George share a playful moment using sign language. George cheekily gives him the middle finger before a warm fist bump. One of the female workers attempts to flirt with Davis, but he gently declines, leading Nelson to tease him for always choosing animals over people. That night, the 3 mutagen canisters re-enter Earth's atmosphere. One crashes near the sanctuary, releasing gas that George is exposed to. Another lands deep in the forest and is discovered by a curious wolf, and the third sinks into a swamp, where it is swallowed by a crocodile. The next morning, Davis is alerted that George is acting erratically. Shockingly, the gorilla has broken into the grizzly bear enclosure and killed a bear. Davis rushes to him and finds George visibly injured and distressed. In a moment of rare emotional clarity, George expresses regret using sign language. The most disturbing change, however, is George's massive growth. He is far larger than he was the day before. While examining the scene, Davis and his team recover one of the canisters and bring it in for analysis. The tests reveal dangerously high levels of growth hormone that should be lethal. Nelson suggests that George should be euthanized before things get worse, but Davis firmly refuses to allow it. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Energyne, the corporation behind the CRISPR experiments, siblings Brett and Claire Wyden argue over the consequences of the failed test aboard Athena-1. Brett is furious over the destroyed investment and potential lawsuits, but Claire is ecstatic. The mutated rat proves that their top-secret initiative, Project Rampage, is a success. When a report from the Meteor Society pinpoints the landing site of one canister, Claire wastes no time. She hires a mercenary named Burke and sends his elite team to retrieve it. In the forest, the squad finds the canister has already been emptied and comes across evidence of widespread carnage. Trees torn apart, animal remains, and massive footprints. Claire quickly deduces that the wolf has mutated and instructs Burke to capture it alive. Elsewhere, a former Energyne geneticist named Dr. Kate Caldwell watches alarming news reports about the Athena-1 disaster and the strange behavior of a gorilla in San Diego. Realizing the truth, she hurries to the sanctuary and confronts Davis. Initially skeptical of her motives, Davis begins to believe her when she correctly describes George's symptoms in detail. Kate explains that the mutagen is rewriting George's DNA, blending it with traits from other aggressive animals, making him exponentially stronger and more dangerous. Before they can process this, George grows agitated, breaks out of his enclosure, and goes on a violent rampage. smashing through fences, flipping vehicles, and scaring visitors. Police arrive and prepare to open fire, but Davis manages to calm George using sign language. Just as the situation seems under control, a sniper tranquilizes George, knocking him out cold. Back in the forest, Burke's squad comes face to face with the mutated wolf, now known as Ralph. They try to subdue him from the air with heavy gunfire. At first, it seems to work, but when they land to investigate, Ralph launches a brutal ambush. Now towering in size, armored with thick hide, and surprisingly agile, he leaps onto a helicopter mid-flight, ripping it apart. The entire team is slaughtered in the chaos. Burke himself is killed without mercy. That same night, Davis, Kate, and the unconscious George are arrested by FBI agent Harvey Russell, accused of engaging in illegal genetic research. George is sedated and loaded onto a military cargo plane alongside them. During the flight, Russell mocks Davis's career switch from special forces to animal conservation. He also reveals Kate's past. She was fired from Energyne and imprisoned after attempting to expose their illegal research. Feeling betrayed, Davis begins to question whether he can trust her. Meanwhile, back at Energyne, Claire Wyden puts her final plan into motion. She activates a low-frequency signal from her skyscraper in downtown Chicago. The signal will attract the mutated creatures, allowing them to converge on the city. Once the military eliminates them, she plans to extract and monetize the surviving DNA for profit. The signal is picked up by both Ralph and the mutated crocodile, Lizzie, triggering them to begin their journey toward Chicago. Aboard the plane, the same signal begins to affect George. Despite sedation, he awakens in a frenzy. He breaks free of his restraints, thrashes the aircraft interior, and easily shrugs off gunfire. He charges through the panicked crew and severely injures Russell. Davis attempts to de-escalate the situation using sign language, but more shooting only fuels George's rage. Amid the chaos, a violent explosion cripples the plane's engine. Losing altitude fast, the aircraft spirals out of control, plummeting toward the earth. As George was slammed against a wall by a crashing cart, Davis swiftly strapped parachutes onto himself, Kate, and Russell. With mere seconds to spare, they leapt from the aircraft before it exploded mid-air, leaving George behind inside the wreckage. When they landed and made their way to the crash site, they were stunned to find no trace of George's body. Instead, a long trail of disturbed grass suggested that George had miraculously survived and was now heading toward the city on foot. Back at the headquarters of Energyne, Claire seethed with rage when she found out Kate had survived the crash. Her fury only grew when the FBI arrived to seize all company data, research files, and confidential materials. In a desperate attempt to protect herself, Claire shifted the blame onto Kate, accusing her of being responsible for the chaos unleashed by the mutated beasts. Meanwhile, Davis, disillusioned by the cruelty of mankind, which he had witnessed too often during his years at war, considered abandoning Kate. He was reminded of the moment he rescued baby George, who had been cowering under a vehicle after watching his mother mercilessly slaughtered by poachers. However, Davis had a change of heart after Kate revealed her true intentions. She had designed the CRISPR genetic technology to save her terminally ill brother. But when Energyne chose to weaponize her work, she tried to destroy the research, only to be arrested and jailed. Tragically, her brother died while she was imprisoned. Moved by her honesty, Davis began to trust her. Russell, who had grown sympathetic after they saved his life, contacted his team to come pick them up. They were escorted to a nearby Air Force base, where Colonel Blake showed them satellite footage of George and Ralph charging toward the city. Davis immediately found it odd that both the gorilla and the wolf were traveling in a straight, synchronized path. Kate speculated that they were being drawn to something, likely a signal or beacon, and suspected that Claire might be luring them with the antidote. Although Russell tried to advocate for Davis and Kate, Blake refused to involve civilians and ordered them escorted off the premises. Outside the base, Davis tried reasoning with the soldiers guarding the gate. When words failed, he acted quickly, incapacitating the guards and hijacking a helicopter. Surprisingly, Russell stepped in, not to stop them, but to hand them the ignition keys and a phone, offering his support. Meanwhile, Blake deployed his military units to intercept the creatures, But even with large-scale firepower, the mission failed. Explosives, bullets, and tanks were all ineffective, and the entire force was wiped out. With no other option, Blake ordered a full-scale evacuation of the city. Russell updated Davis about the city-wide evacuation, but Davis feared time was running out. As George and Ralph entered the urban area, the destruction began immediately. Skyscrapers crumbled, vehicles were smashed, and helicopters were swatted from the sky. The military fought back with everything they had, but nothing slowed the monsters down. From the depths of the river, the mutated crocodile Lizzie emerged, bringing even greater devastation. With her armored skin, massive size, and powerful jaws, she tore apart tanks, devoured soldiers, and downed fighter jets. As a last resort, Blake ordered an airstrike to bomb the entire city center. Russell pleaded with Blake to delay the strike, arguing that Davis and Kate were close to obtaining the antidote. But Blake, distrustful and under immense pressure, dismissed the warning and prepared to proceed. Around the same time, Russell received critical evidence implicating Claire in the disaster, prompting him to issue arrest warrants. Meanwhile, Davis and Kate had managed to break into the Energine building and steal 3 vials of the antidote. Claire, watching through surveillance cameras, intercepted them and explained that the antidote wouldn't reverse the mutation, it would only suppress the animal's aggression. She shot Davis, leaving him unconscious, and took Kate hostage at gunpoint. Leading her to the rooftop, Claire planned to escape via helicopter. However, George had already climbed the building and smashed the helicopter's tail rotor, destabilizing it and causing Kate to nearly fall. Just then, Davis reappeared, wounded but alive, having survived the gunshot as it missed all vital organs. As George began destroying the antenna transmitting the signal, Kate revealed she had secretly hidden one of the vials. Claire lunged at Kate, but Kate slipped the antidote vial into Claire's bag and delivered a powerful punch. Davis then shouted to George, signaling him to act. George lunged forward and ate Claire, along with the vial tucked in her bag. The antidote began to take effect. On a lower floor, Brett attempted to flee down the stairs with the last remaining company computer and a genetically modified lab rat, hoping to restart his unethical operations elsewhere. He ran into Russell, who confiscated the evidence. Russell let him go, only for falling debris to crush Brett just moments after he exited the building. Outside, Lizzie and Ralph continued their rampage. But George, beginning to calm down from the antidote's effects, showed signs of returning to his old self. Davis and Kate boarded a damaged helicopter just before the tower collapsed. The crash was hard, but they survived. Looking around, Davis realized there were still many civilians who hadn't evacuated. George was still regaining his strength. As Ralph and Lizzie began to clash violently, Davis told Kate to go find Russell while he stayed behind to help George. What followed was a brutal fight. Lizzie, more powerful than either of them anticipated, tore into Ralph and killed him with a fatal bite to the neck. Now, only George stood between Lizzie and total annihilation. But George was clearly outmatched. Davis tried to help by throwing a belt of grenades at Lizzie, but the explosion barely slowed her down. Lizzie hurled George into a building, impaling him on a metal rod. As she moved in for the kill, Davis opened fire from the helicopter, distracting her. Lizzie turned her attention to Davis and was about to strike when George, with a final burst of strength, yanked the steel bar from his torso and launched himself into the air, stabbing it deep into Lizzie's eye. She collapsed, dead at last. Kate reunited with Russell and informed him that George had ingested the antidote. Russell relayed the update to Colonel Blake, who then canceled the pending airstrike after confirming George was no longer a danger. But in the aftermath, George collapsed from exhaustion. Believing he had lost his friend, Davis mourned beside him. Then, just as he was about to walk away, George twitched, playfully pretending to be dead. He flipped Davis off with a cheeky grin, and the two exchanged a heartfelt fist bump. Davis smiled, realizing their fight was over, for now. His next mission was clear: find a sanctuary where George could live in peace, far from the chaos of mankind, and the story ends here. The deep friendship between Davis and George shows that trust, empathy, and loyalty can exist even between species. Davis risks everything to protect George, not because he's a monster, but because he's a friend. This highlights how strong emotional bonds can overcome fear and prejudice. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you in the next video.